This podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to help expand our programming, head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron. You'll receive exclusive podcasts, access to a VIP Facebook group, monthly prize draws, Facebook Live sessions, and much, much more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron today, and the Force will be with you always. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast at talkstarwars.co.uk. Hello everyone, welcome back to Talk Star Wars. I'm Mark.
And I'm Rob.
And everything's gone swimmingly this evening. There has been absolutely no technical hitches whatsoever.
Oh, are we in Bizarro World today? I didn't realise.
Tonight has been nothing but aggravation. It's taken us 1 hour and 5 minutes to get this call up and running.
Yep.
What a nightmare.
That was after you had issues with the Facebook Live as well, right, initially?
Yeah, I mean, that was a separate set of issues. That was iOS 11's fault. And this is a Mac OS fault. So,
oh dear.
Rotten apples everywhere. Rotten apples.
Yeah, not so at Cupertino at the moment.
No. Oh, you cracked up a little bit there. Well, I'm so nervous about this.
Sorry, right. I sniffed. Probably that.
Okay, let's hope that was all that was. All right,
yeah, hopefully.
Let's get things rolling. We're going to start off this show like we start off every show by saying thank you to the people who support us every week. So we're going to kick this off this evening with thank yous to Francis Robinson, who you'll hear more from in just a moment, and Quivine MacOncer.
Oh,
and Paul Anthony. It's ironic that that's the name I struggled with there, right? I need to say thank you. Well, not just a thank you to Quivine for liking the Facebook page, but thank you to Dave Donovan for educating me in the correct way to say that name.
Okay.
I had to reach out to Dave because I was flummoxed. Yeah. So the correct spelling is in the show notes, and of course I have a phonetic spelling as well. So thank you, Francis. Thank you, Quivine, and thank you, Paul, for liking our Facebook page this week. It's very kind of you. And thank you also to Neil. My apologies, Neil Lowry, who has been very active. He's not shown up as a like on Facebook for some reason, but he's been very active, and there's been some exchanges in messages on Facebook. So Facebook's doing well. Yeah. And thanks also to everyone who's subscribed to YouTube. Now, Rob, you and I, when we managed to connect earlier before Cormageddon, we mentioned TubeBuddy and what a wonderful thing TubeBuddy is.
Oh, it's brilliant. I'm an evangelist for it now.
Yes, I'm a huge fan, and you can see in the show notes, if you download the show notes, and they're linked in the description to this episode, you'll see
top and just great.
You will see that I've said a thank you, and then I've scratched off. We're about to hit 200 because as I was writing the show notes, we hit 200 subscribers.
That's awesome.
So thank you to everyone that's subscribed to YouTube this week. Most of you, I'm not seeing your names because you've got your subscriptions as private. But Connor Cunningham, thank you so much for becoming our 200th subscriber. My new goal now is to hit 1,000.
Okay, that's achievable.
We've gone very quickly from 100, which was just painful to scrape together 100 subscribers. We've gone very quickly into 200. And I'm thanking TubeBuddy for that, because it's given me the tools I need to sort of get the YouTube channel out there.
It's a brilliant bit of software. I'm well made up with it.
It really is wonderful. Today I fine-tuned some of the tags on the channel and some of the tags on the video. It's just such a great tool.
Did you get that upgrade offer I mentioned?
I did get the upgrade offer.
Did you take it?
I didn't take advantage of it immediately because I was working, and now I can't find the email. I will find it. I will definitely find it, and I will upgrade, because some of the functionality that is just out of my reach as a entry level user
Yeah,
is very tantalising. So yeah,
it's very very cool. I'm really pleased with it. I'm using it at the moment, but not right now. But I mean, I'm using it currently, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like I say, I've been tinkering with it today, fine tuning some of the tags and what have you, and it's just been amazing. There's a live subscription count on there as well, which is beautiful. It's just everything about it is just wonderful. So, 200 subscribers. Thank you, Connor Cunningham, and next goal is 1,000. All right, talking about goals. This week we launched a Patreon campaign. The idea is we had our private little VIP service that had been running for a year. It'd been running exactly a year when I changed over to Patreon. And the VIP program was a way for people to support us, support our existing programming, and hopefully grow that programming and expand outwards.
Certainly worked.
It has worked. And it's the main reason for moving... Or there was no reason why I didn't go with Patreon. I think I just underestimated how quickly the supporter program would grow and become its own sort of entity. Mm-hmm. And Patreon seems the best place to go in order to manage the content, the flow of content from us to the patrons.
Yeah.
So we moved over there this week, and it's just been wonderful.
It's been great. I've been really happy with it.
Yeah, the tools are fantastic on that setup. Absolutely fantastic with content management.
I can actually listen to it on my phone.
Yes, because it downloads to
your on the podcast feed.
Goes to your podcatcher, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'm really pleased with it. So we launched that this week, and so it only seemed fitting that I changed the daily podcast from what was a show called The Kessel Run. Which was quite raw, and sometimes I'd record on my phone when I was walking the dog and things like that. And now I've mixed things up, and it's now called the Talk Star Wars Daily Podcast. I do it. So far, I've done every episode in the studio.
Yep.
But the way the gremlins have been working in the studio today, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, quite.
And it has been fantastic. I've been getting shows out to people that haven't been able to take advantage of them before, like yourself, Rob, because it hasn't been readily available because you've had to either stream from the site or find a way to download.
Yeah, the streaming from the site it's nothing to do with the technology. It's a problem of it's easier for me to justify listening on a podcatcher than it is on through a website.
Well, I spoke to Ads.
To work and stuff.
I spoke to Ads, and Ads will be a familiar name to most people that listen to this show, I'm sure. Ads has been a long-time supporter. Is one of the... he and Connor were the two people that first started to engage us in conversation when we kicked this thing off. So they've really been around since the very early episodes.
Yeah.
And Ads was saying... I think it was last week in a Facebook Live, he said, is there any way we can get the Kessel Run into iTunes? Because I don't get the benefit of it. You know, I hear one every now and then.
Yeah.
And that started the ball rolling. So you think we did Facebook Live on a Thursday. We're now recording on a Thursday. In a week, we made the decision as a community to transfer everything over to Patreon. And then, even though the Patreon page was built, because I built that in advance a long time ago, I did have to fine-tune everything, all the details, I had to fine-tune those. But from a week, we've gone from a standing start as, shall we do this, to launching it.
Yeah.
It's really gone very smoothly.
Yes.
It's really gone very, very smoothly.
Very smoothly.
And I've seen nothing but benefits from it. So,
yeah.
Brand new daily podcast there. There's just a few... Star Wars news stories that I discuss, a little bit of listener comms, like a daily listener comms. It's just a really nice, neat, sort of compact little show.
Yeah.
There's none of the usual chaos that we have on. Well, I mean, there won't be any chaos tonight because it's just you and I. But none of the usual cat herding that takes place on this show. It's just a nice and clean Star Wars talk. That's all it is. So we've got. I mean, the first week has been really incredibly successful. I'm really pleased with the way we've gone. We've almost brought all of our VIPs over. We've picked up new people.
Excellent.
And I've set the first goal at 200 patrons. So the first goal, once we hit 200 patrons, it will trigger a call-in show.
Okay.
So the idea is that we'll go live. We'll give the link out to the Skype call. We'll bring people in, have a quick chat, throw some Star Wars talk around, and then we're out. We're on to the next caller, that kind of thing. I've done this before, just for VIPs previously, and it works. So that's the first call was 200, and then every 200 patrons we add, I'm going to do a live show, a call-in show. And then the big goals are at 1,500.
Okay.
And then there's another goal which seems just so far away, and they will trigger brand new weekly podcasts, one dedicated to Star Wars Rebels and one dedicated to the Clone Wars show.
All right.
So we're a long way away from that. Hopefully we'll pick up enough speed to get there, and we can get these brand new shows out, and they will be Patreon or patron exclusive podcasts. Okay. So yeah, it's all going really well. It's been a really good. Yeah. It's been a busy week, but it's been really successful. So thank you to everyone that supported us in the move across. It's greatly appreciated, and I hope that you're finding it rewarding, that move. All right, let's move on to what would ordinarily be our review section. We have no reviews this week.
Indeed.
But don't forget, you can take advantage of what we call our Ron Burgundy policy. That means whatever you write a 5-star review in iTunes, we will read verbatim.
Yep.
So whatever you want to promote, if it's a podcast of your own or a blog, or even if you want to just wish someone happy birthday or even propose. My dream is that someone will take advantage of that at some point. You can do that you can do that in a 5-star review, and we only have one rule when it comes to that, and that is keep it clean. Because
never mind then. Yeah,
we are a family show. All right, should we move into listener comms? Right, this is a really heavy listener comms episode. We've had a couple of really active weeks, and I've been rolling emails over and over and over. So I thought we'd just throw a whole bunch at this week.
And we got the best ones.
We got the best 2 people to take care of it. I don't think we're going to see anybody else this evening, so we'll.
Well, we can but hope.
We can just go for this. Would you like to
interpret that how you will? By the way, apparently you've taken it in a different way than what I intended. So just go with whatever you thought that meant.
Yeah. No, I'm going to read my.
All right,
listeners.
Fine by me.
It's up to you. View this
by all means.
From all
I encourage people to make their own judgments.
Rob, would you like to take Ryan's comment? There are some comments in here, some messages as well as questions. There's a nice little mix, so there's not always breakdowns with these things.
You don't want me to do the next one, no? All right, fine. Oh, sorry, the one after that. Never mind. Okay, so from Ryan over on YouTube. Hello, Ryan. The Certain Point of View book is absolutely amazing, but I have to agree with Rob when it comes to Yoda's and Obi-Wan's conversation. What I didn't like is that it turned Yoda into a hypocrite. Why does Yoda have Qui-Gon Jinn's cloak when Jedi are not supposed to have attachments? The whole audio book, by the way, it's 36 hours long, but it's truly an amazing book. From Ryan. Oh, I'm glad. Obviously, I like that because he agrees with me, and I think I get the feeling people are reluctant to come forward with that sometimes. So it's nice to hear somebody with boldness. They've come forward and they've said what we're all thinking. Yeah, which is that I'm right about stuff occasionally.
Yeah, well, I definitely think those exact words most of the time. But
good to see.
Yeah, I don't think I looked that closely at it.
I didn't think. Do you know? It's funny when he says he agrees with me about the conversation, but that didn't even occur to me, to be honest. He's thought of something that, like I say, it didn't even occur to me.
Well, I wonder, there's this mix now in Star Wars storytelling of inconsistencies due to lack of vision and intricacies due to extreme planning on the part of the story group.
Right.
And I don't know which side this one falls on.
Yes.
If it's intricacies on the part of the story group's planning, then they're setting Yoda up as a hypocrite for a reason. And this might answer the why does Luke say it's time for the Jedi to end? Because they're setting up the old Jedi Order as being flawed.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
A lot of people are worried about that.
Yeah, it's something I've been kind of wary of. I mean, I was wary about it with Obi-Wan and Satine in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's a little bit of it kind of overwrites his devotion and his devoutness to the Jedi Order, which is for me is no good.
Devout. That's a good word to use to describe these the Jedi that we know, the Jedi Order that we know.
Yeah, well, not for nothing, but he spends most of A New Hope talking about how great the Jedi were and looks back on them very fondly. At no point does he say, "Oh, thinking back on it, we made some mistakes along the way."
Yeah, we really did muff quite a lot up.
Muffed up is the word.
Yeah, I think if we're honest with ourselves, if you look at what we've learned from the OT, I mean, you have to be able to look at the big picture. And if you place the films that narratively came before the OT, the prequels, if you place them in order and you look at where we end up with Luke succeeding at something that Obi-Wan and Yoda failed at.
Well, it's not even they failed it. They just didn't even try. They wrote it off, right?
It was compassion that saved Anakin and brought about the fall of the Sith, the return of the Jedi, the fulfillment of the Chosen One's prophecy, bringing balance back to the Force. Everything was born out of ideals that the Jedi had abandoned.
Yeah.
Connection, ownership, compassion, attachment, all of those things. The Jedi jettisoned those. But they were the tool set that Luke needed to achieve a goal. So in a way, we've already been taught that the Jedi were wrong.
Yeah.
Even when we look at it in just the OT, it was two Jedi telling Luke to do one thing and he did the other and had success. So they are flawed. I think if you look at them in the prequels, they're deeply flawed. And
there's a difference, isn't there, between they're flawed and this like a ham-fisted, look how flawed they are, everyone. How flawed. They're so flawed.
Well, that's when the domino falls the other way, isn't it? And it falls into the line of inconsistencies. And that would probably be where I put my money at the moment. I think there are inconsistencies. And with a certain point of view, I think we're being told not to read too much into this in terms of canon. Not to put too much stock in it. Yeah,
from what Nathan was saying in the VIP group, it was kind of it's sort of fast and loose canon almost.
Yeah,
it's which I'm fine with. Like I said, when we talked about it in more depth last episode, which you should all go and check out. Obviously after this, because it's brilliant, and we were all very insightful. But yeah, when we were talking about that, I was kind of I was of that opinion then, and I still am that. It's not so bad if you bear in mind that it's not designed to be a hard canon, this is how it is kind of approach. If it's just a bit of a fast and loose, look, there's a space here, have some fun with it, then that's good by me.
Yeah. I think I'll be able to accept that because the stories I've heard so far I think are wonderful.
Yeah.
And if I'm being asked to just accept them for what they are and not read too much into them, then fine, I'll take it. But the breaking of canon, I do have an issue with. Like the thing with Yoda's lightsaber, we know from the comic books that the lightsaber doesn't exist, but it's in a textbook as being with him on Dagobah.
Yeah.
So there's a break in canon there. I do have an issue with that because I think that these guys should have this nailed down. I know there was a mention in the VIP group this week, Wesley and Nathan again.
Yes.
Two of the most learned minds in our community were discussing some of the breaks in canon and how Pablo apparently had said he didn't really know too much about the Barish Vow.
Right.
So it seems that there's some fragmentation within the story group. Somebody oversees a certain element, somebody else oversees something else.
Yeah.
And never the twain will meet. I don't know if there's one.
There should be an integration.
There should be someone in the God seat making sure that this stuff ties together, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm kind of thinking about my, my own work in terms of context. But in our line of work, even if our team is working on one thing, we have somebody overseeing it, and then somebody overseeing that. And the idea is, it's designed to understand everybody. There's one person who kind of has a pretty good understanding of what's going on at any given time.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not, that person is not expected to be able to tell you everything all the time, but they should know exactly where to find that information quickly and simply.
Yeah, and make sure that A and B complement each other.
Exactly.
And aren't contradicting one another.
Yeah, indeed.
That's very important here. So it's with 36 hours of stories being told here.
That does sound cool, actually. I do like me some audiobooks, especially when they're Star Wars ones, because the production value is always very good.
No, it's outstanding. This looks like it's going to be very good. But yeah, Ryan's very active over on YouTube. So thank you very much, Ryan, for taking the time to leave the comments, the insightful comments that you do. We do like an engaged listener, so thank you very, very much. Speaking of engaged listeners, and we mentioned him once already this evening, Ads.
Yes.
Ads has sent us in a voicemail, and we've got a breakdown here, but let's listen to the voicemail and then we'll kick this around for a little while. This is from Ads this week.
Evening, Mark. Evening, Rob. Evening, Steve. Evening, Paul. So I'm sending an audio message in. I did try and put something down in writing, but it made no sense at all. So hopefully this will be a little clearer. My question concerns the Vader-Sidious relationship. Now, we all know how that ended, the end of Return of the Jedi, but it was always considered to be quite a unstable relationship. I know Mark has spoken previously about the scene on the ship in Empire Strikes Back with the hologram of Sidious's head, and you knew that both mistrusted the other. So how do you think it would have played out if that relationship had come to a head prior to the end of Return of the Jedi? Who would have won? Who would have come out on top between Vader and Sidious? And how would that have affected the rest of the story? If Sidious had defeated Vader, does that change what then happens with Luke? Luke was armed all the way through with the drive to try and reclaim Anakin. Something again that was touched on in last week's show, that Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi had both missed. That was what set Luke apart. Now, without Vader there, does that then allow Sidious a better chance of turning Luke to the dark side, or no chance at all? Likewise, if Vader had defeated Sidious, does that then mean that he never ever comes back to the light? For example, that scene on Bespin where him and Luke fought, if Vader had just defeated Sidious, what happens in that scene? So if Vader had attempted to seize power for himself, what would have happened? And depending on whether you think Vader is successful or not, how do you then see that playing out? Hope you have a great show. Thoroughly enjoyed the TSW Daily, Mark, the other day. Keep up the great work, and I shall speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, Eds. First night at the Commonwealth, what a gentleman.
Yeah, well, he is a lovely chap.
He is.
We've had the pleasure of talking to him on the roundtable, haven't we?
Yeah, the very first episode.
That was a wonderful experience for me.
It was good. And this is a blinding question. Absolutely wonderful question. Mm-hmm. What happens if Vader defeats Sidious early on?
Good question.
How do things change? Do you want to have a crack at that, Rob?
I think. Well, I mean, first of all, I actually think Sidious would win. Even though Anakin's the chosen one, I do feel like over time Sidious has deliberately, I would imagine, taken steps to just make him just chip away a little bit at what what he's about. So I'd imagine over time, I feel like he would be, slightly weakened for his experiences with Palpatine, because Palpatine would have craved the power too much and would want to keep it at all costs.
Yeah,
that's just my kind of initial reaction. In any case, in terms of what would that mean going forward, I think it depends on when it happened, doesn't it? If it happens kind of before New Hope, then it changes things considerably.
Yeah.
I'll put a cool one out there because it's obviously we have no way of knowing this sort of thing, so I'm just going to have to speculate. So I'm going to speculate right here on the mic. I'm going to say that had the events happened around the time of Empire, Sidious would have been the one to tell Luke Vader's secret.
Oh, that's good.
In order to wind him up enough to make him turn to the dark side, and then he would have subdued him and won him and tried to win him over to his team.
That's amazing.
That'd be cool, right?
Yeah, I hadn't considered. That's amazing. I hadn't considered how Luke would react if he got that information from a third party.
Yeah.
So he got it from the horse's mouth and he took it badly enough.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
If you go down the route of getting it from somebody else's mouth. Oh my.
Got it from the Sidious's mouth. That's really fascinating. That would probably be enough to push Luke over, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would. He was already in a vulnerable place. I reckon Palpatine would have put himself in harm's way, or seemingly done so, much like he did in Jedi initially. So he would have put himself deliberately in harm's way to draw Luke in, and then engaged him in combat.
That's interesting. Well, I'll play a different scenario then, and I'll suggest that Vader gets the upper hand. I think you're probably right. I think out of the two Sith Lords, Sidious is more powerful than Vader.
Okay.
But Sidious, as we saw in Jedi, wasn't more powerful than Anakin. That's the distinction.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That it wasn't until Anakin came back that Sidious really lost the high ground, which is obviously a thing.
Yes.
But if Vader was to better Sidious, I don't think he would have needed Luke. And depending on, like you said, depending on where it happens within canon, we may not have seen Luke activated to have been brought into action. If
I see.
If Vader removed Sidious, things might have gone very differently within the Empire.
Yeah.
Because Anakin's motivations were always immature, to be sure, but they were not quite as selfish as Palpatine's.
Yeah.
He wanted to make things right, and he wanted to be fair. And remember, this is a kid that grew up in slavery.
Yeah.
He wanted to free all the slaves. He wanted the universe to be fair. Sidious, not so much. He wanted power. So if Vader had destroyed Sidious, I don't think the Empire would have quite been what we learnt, or what we first came to know it as.
Yeah.
It would have been a little bit more generous, a little bit more compassionate, whereas Sidious's empire was evil and full of hate.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. I don't think he would have needed Luke, and that's the interesting thing about the middle of that original trilogy, is that the struggle between Anakin and Vader, those identities, when it comes to Luke, is that Vader very much needs Luke as an ally. He needs that power. He needs the strength.
Yeah.
Because he's too weak. Or he perceives himself to be too weak, and therefore he is too weak to confront Palpatine.
Yeah.
So he needs Luke like a junkie at that point.
Yeah.
And that's why he's using him. He doesn't really... It's not until the end of Return of the Jedi that he actually realizes that this is his son, and Anakin makes a connection through Vader to Luke. Up until that point, he just sees Luke as an asset, as an ally, and so I think if he didn't need him, he'd probably be less interested in making that connection and making that alliance with his son. Certainly if he seized power and was getting the results that he wanted to get, he may not have ever learnt about Luke's existence, right?
Yeah, I guess not.
If Obi-Wan didn't need to push a boy forward into action. Yeah. So it's hard to know in this situation. It's hard to put the cart before the horse and say, if this happened, these things would be different, because there are so many parts moving, aren't there?
Yeah.
But I do think if Vader had defeated Sidious, he wouldn't have needed Luke, and Vader would have run the Empire.
Yeah, I find that interesting. That's an interesting concept. I hadn't thought about it from that point of view, but clearly, that's why it's good to have the two of us on here, because we just thought about it from the opposite point of view, just as a matter of course. Just we're so used to it. Yeah. So such pros.
But I would never have considered this without ads laying this out for me. I would never have thought
indeed.
How would that affect? Because I've always seen that moment, like he referenced, I'd mentioned it multiple times. It's my favourite scene in all of Star Wars, that exchange between Vader and Palpatine, when you see the Sith power play is revealed, like they're calling each other out. But we both know that there's this new party on the field. Which one of us is going to get to him first? Because it will mean certain doom for the other, right?
Yeah,
that fascinates me. That dynamic. That's something I wish we'd have seen more of.
Yeah,
but that might have changed dramatically if Vader had got the upper hand early on. But then the beauty of this story is that it isn't Vader that gets the upper hand at all. It's the return of Anakin because of Luke's presence in his life that gives him the strength to defeat Sidious. So you're right. I think Sidious would have always won.
Maybe
if not for Luke.
Ultimately, we'll never know. So
no, but it is nice to play this sometimes, isn't it? It is nice.
It is, yeah. I sort of hope they go back to that approach with because they did the Infinities comics in Dark Horse.
Yeah,
I think it was Dark Horse. Anyway, there was Infinities comics, and they were all, what if this happened instead of this? And it was always on a binary choice, sort of. What if you missed the shot on the first Death Star? Well, that sort of thing.
In issue 5 of the Darth Vader comic, and you can hear this on issue 5 of Talk Star Wars comics.
Oh, that's good. That's handy.
Thank you. Which came out last month, or came out just last week. You can hear us talk about issue 5 of Darth Vader, where there is a little bit of this. There is a little bit of the Elseworlds stuff, the alternate universe stuff, where a kyber crystal that Vader is trying to corrupt, trying to bleed, forces upon him a vision through the Force of a life where he goes and defeats Sidious and then finds Obi-Wan to seek forgiveness. It's just the most beautiful flash of an option that Anakin had at that point and chose to ignore. And it was something that was being delivered through the Force.
Yeah.
You can defeat this guy and then go and find your old master and undo all of this stuff you've done. And he chooses to ignore it.
Yeah.
Which I think strengthens, my feeling on this thing. I'd rather the bad guys have agency over their decisions, and they're not always conned. They're not always tricked into these things. They actually make poor decisions at sometimes. And it shows in this instance that Anakin made a bad decision. But the alternative route for Anakin at that point is fascinating. Really, really beautiful comic, really well written.
Yeah.
Go and listen to us talk about it. Okay.
All right.
Ads, awesome question. Thank you so much for sending that in.
Yes, cheers, mate.
It's always good to hear you chatting on the show as well. We like a voicemail.
Mark, just a quick question about the Patreon. So does I've got the feed now with the daily shows on it. You know how patrons have historically got things slightly earlier, like some of the monthly shows?
Yes.
Will they go through that same feed?
Indeed.
Oh, they will. Mate,
they will indeed.
Well, I look forward to that because I am a Talk Star Wars patron. So
yes,
that is something I will enjoy.
Yes. So next, I'm sure you guys will be getting together to do the Talk Star Wars Toy Box.
Oh yes,
monthly show very shortly. So as soon as that's baked, it will hit the Patreon feed.
Yep.
So all of our VIPs will get that immediately, and then it will hit Apple Podcasts and YouTube later in the week.
Yeah. Cool.
Priority release content, which is one of the bonuses of our Patreon campaign.
Well, that just sounds wonderful.
We have a message here from Omer. Now, Omer is a 2-time winner in the prize draw.
He is. He won earlier.
He won the Porg, the Chase Porg this evening.
Marvellous. Lucky boy. Yeah,
lucky. He's very lucky. So you'll also be pleased to know, Rob, that everyone can win now, including yourself and Paul.
I caught the Took Star Wars Daily today, which is just one of the wonderful advantages of being on Patreon.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, if a host, because we have so many hosts that are actually patrons as well.
Do we? I thought I was special. Never mind.
You are special, but in a very different way. When we get a patron that wins, I'm going to double up the prizes so that. When we get a host that wins, I'm going to double up the prizes so that a patron gets a second bite of the cherry. So it's not, we're never sort of doing anything in-house. Everyone gets an opportunity to win something. So, But Omer is a 2-time winner. Would you like to take Omer's rather lengthy question this week?
I'd be delighted.
Please.
Right, so Omer writes, hello again, peoples, and Rob.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering my question last week. Enjoyed the discussion. Every time I wanted to say, but someone mentioned my point. Brilliant. Stuff like that is why I started listening in the first place. That's true. He told me that once.
That is high praise.
It is lovely. Anyway, I was spitballing something in the VIP group the other day that wasn't a sandwich, and I've had some time to think it over. On the Chosen One prophecy stuff. What if Anakin is and was the only Chosen One? That's done. However, there's nothing to say that people can't think there's another one or lie to the same effect. Put yourself in Ben Solo's shoes. Luke mistakenly believes that you're the subject of prophecy for some reason and treats you as such. Snoke reaches out and tempts you away, something about the Chosen One working better with the dark side like Vader. He raises a whole army, the First Order, around the idea that he has the Second Coming at his right-hand side. Oh my.
Ooh.
Then he tells Kylo that it's all lies. He's not the Chosen One, and if all his followers found out, they'd kill him. Now he does anything to keep the lie going, brainwashed as he is. Kills innocent people, tries to live the lie and become that powerful, even killing his father. Snoke may even have said, you can't be the Chosen One, there's a girl more powerful than you, and even she's not the Chosen One. Hence how Kylo knows about Rey and supposedly either wants her on his side or dead. Once Luke and Rey open that rock in The Last Jedi, for Luke's first time, I think, Luke reads the book that certifies that Kylo cannot be the Chosen One and realizes the danger he's in and the mistakes he's made, and they zoom off to save Kylo. I realize that none of this is a question, but a series of opinions, which is crazy. But see if you can't train yourselves to get something out of it on your podcast. Love and sparkles, Omer. Well, that's a lot. I like the sparkles. That added a little extra. That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, he was already off to a flyer, and then he just brings it home even more. That was.
It always sticks a
lengthy, but totally worth. Yeah, lengthy but totally worth it.
Yeah. So breakdown.
I mean, after that, I can't help it, can I? I really like that. Some of that already is a thing, isn't it? Kind of established in new canon because Obi-Wan mistakenly believes that Luke's the Chosen One, so people can get it wrong.
Yes.
So I like that because it ties in nicely with what's already been seen, and it doesn't require you to have seen Rebels and all that stuff. So I like it, and I really like it actually as a theory. Really, really cool. The idea that he's, they go in, he reads the book, and he goes, "Oh, nuts!"
Yeah.
Like, we have to find him. He's in terrible danger. And be like, and Rey would still be conflicted about that because, like, terrible danger. He did this, he did that, and
he killed Han.
And yeah, exactly. And in the process of doing that, Luke can sort of run the history off how they got to that point.
Yeah,
that would work really well, actually.
It's incredible,
lovely.
And what I really like about it as well is that it shows that we, as the audience, we appreciate this Chosen One prophecy as being Anakin, and we have the benefit of the guy that wrote the story telling us. George says, yes, Anakin is the Chosen One.
Yes, but
there's nothing says that everyone has to appreciate that. They don't all have that. They don't enjoy that insight.
Yeah,
but Obi-Wan doesn't know yet that Anakin is going to fulfill his destiny and become the Chosen One. Mm-hmm. He just thinks you were supposed to bring it. He has dialogue at the end of Revenge of the Sith. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them.
Yeah. Because he still thinks that's what the Chosen One does.
Exactly. So Obi-Wan can be forgiven in Rebels for thinking that Luke's the Chosen One because the last guy he thought was the Chosen One fell to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
So he hasn't got the benefit of our perspective.
Yeah.
And now with Luke, he may not appreciate the Chosen One prophecy from our position as the audience, with our benefit of seeing everything the way it's played out because of the issue with him falling to the dark side and slaughtering everybody. Order 66, a Jedi purge, those poor kids in the temple, Padme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To Luke, that might not qualify Anakin as the Chosen One, so he may still interpret Kylo as being the Chosen One, and that's the thread that Snoke has started to tug on.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll play this advantage. You know, Kylo clearly, or Ben Solo clearly thinks, because he's been told by everyone, you're special. Oh, well, I'll play on that until I can get him in a position. And he'll just use him like an enforcer, the way Sidious did with all of his apprentices.
Yeah.
Just muscle.
Sure. I really like it. I think it's a really clever idea.
Really clever, really insightful.
It's a really unexpected way to bring Kylo back into the light side without going down the same path as Jedi. Because it requires it can't be done in the same way if you go down that route.
No.
So it would, you know, for lack of a better expression, it would force them to think around that problem.
Yeah. It does leave Rey out there as a bit of a wild card.
But then wouldn't that be good to kind of...
It would be wonderful.
We've talked about how interesting it would be if she was being kind of, you know, pulled pillar to post from the dark side and the light side, and, you know, she may... I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to make it work.
So she could be the Chosen One. Another Chosen One. She could be the subject of a different prophecy. Yes, another one sent to fulfill a certain function.
Yep.
And maybe the redemption of Ben Solo is her mission. But maybe the redemption of Ben Solo isn't important. The redemption of Anakin was.
Yes.
But Ben Solo is a monster of his own making.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's had people whispering in his ears, and perhaps because of the way his uncle saw him all his life, that kind of changes Ben's approach to certain aspects of his own behaviour. But there is nothing really to save with. There was something to save with Anakin because he was the Chosen One. We know that, but there's nothing really to save with Ben, is there?
Not really.
It's just everyone thinking we need to save Ben, maybe. You know, that might be Luke's motivation. I screwed up. I caused this. We need to pull this kid back from the dark side. So when you look at it like that, Rey's function seems to be, at first glance, Luke's function in the original trilogy, and she might bring about the return of Ben Solo.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the return isn't on the cards and she needs to destroy Ben Solo? That might be her function.
Well, that could be. This is what I was trying to vocalize earlier, and I couldn't get my words together in the right order. Isn't it always the way?
Mm-hmm.
But I could see a situation where Luke's thinking, "Oh, we've got to save Ben," and she's saying, "No, he's you know, I don't think you understand what he did. Like, he killed his father, he killed Han Solo, he killed your best friend," and Luke's kind of still like, "Oh no, you know, I can save everyone, and you know, that would kind of be a really nice conflict for his character because he's kind of coming to terms with the fact that he can't save everyone, and actually hasn't got a fantastic success rate.
Yeah, but it would play on the fact that the last time he made those moves was when Obi-Wan and Yoda were saying, you got to go and kill him. And he said, no, I'm going to do something different, and had success.
So they almost flip roles in that perspective, because Rey's telling him, you know, he's not worth it, essentially.
Yeah.
And she's saying, Luke's saying, no, I can make it work. I can save him. And then, you know, that might end up pitting Rey against Luke, not in the sense that they're enemies in the strictest, you know, in the very kind of literal sense, because that would actually be could end up a bit hackneyed and a bit stilted. It would be better in the sense that it's just that they disagree. And they want the same goal, but they want to go about it in the completely opposite way.
Yeah. And Luke trying to get it because he's already had success in the way he's trying to do it again. Yeah. And she's coming at it from Luke's perspective, but he just can't recognize it. She's saying to the master, no, you're wrong. I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And the master is saying no, but Luke's basing his understanding on a method that's already been successful for him. It's it's very intricate, and it's very interesting to think that they might be playing on some of our expectations.
Yeah, it would be nice if they're doing that. Especially, it would be nice because it would because it reframes everything. Like I said, it's harder to make the argument that anything's derivative if you're doing something. You might be touching on similar themes, but if you're doing it in such a vastly different way, it's hard to argue the toss on that one.
Yeah, turn it on its head.
Yeah, precisely.
And if it still makes sense. Oh, I really like that, Omer. Very, very, very insightful. Really good stuff. All right, thank you very much, and congratulations on your win this evening.
Yep.
All right, this is from Katie. Katie sent us a message on Twitter, and she says, "Hey guys, sorry I couldn't get a question last week. I was getting ready to head to EGX, a gaming convention that takes place at the NEC in Birmingham.
I'm a little bit jealous.
I did plan to try and play Battlefront 2 this weekend at the convention, but the queues were insanely long, but I'm not too disappointed because I know I'll be getting it and I'll be loving it. Mm-hmm. I managed to play a few other games which I enjoyed most, but anyway, it's question time. So in The Force Awakens, we saw the First Order Stormtrooper with a flamethrower at the beginning of the film on Jakku. We then saw a Stormtrooper that Finn fought outside Maz's palace use some sort of electric staff. And with the introduction of the First Order Executioner Trooper, we're going to see some sort of futuristic sci-fi battle axe. So my question is, if you could introduce a new weapon for the Stormtroopers to use, what would it be? And she goes on to say, come on, how cool would it be to see a Stormtrooper wielding a sci-fi electric chainsaw or a Gatling gun? She wants these guys to have some heavy artillery.
She's not messing around.
So this is a nice, fun question. A new weapon for Stormies, Rob. Go.
I'm trying to think. Have you got one in mind?
I have. I can go first if you like.
Yeah. By all means do.
Way back in the day, I think actually the artwork Ralph McQuarrie produced to concept prove Star Wars for the board at 20th Century Fox included some images of stormtroopers wielding lightsabers.
Okay.
And these were at the time thought to be weapons that were universal. They weren't just for the Jedi. So I wonder if it might be a good idea. And I know Steve has brought this up before. It might be a good idea if the stormtroopers get lightsabers.
Okay.
And then it'd be a nice sort of nod to Ralph McQuarrie. But it also shows that, they're one step away from it with that thing that Katie referenced, the sort of sci-fi battle axe thing.
Yeah.
They're one step away from it.
Mm.
So why not just go the whole hog? Kylo knows how to make this tech. Just give them lightsabers and train them.
I'm going to go slightly different take on it. It's a weapon we'd have seen in fiction. Electric hollow whip.
Oh, yes.
I could see that being cool.
Yeah, where have I seen that recently? I've seen that in something.
Iron Man 2?
Oh, yeah, there's that. I think it might be Kingsman 2 as well.
Oh, yes, I think
they have like a lasso.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
I like the sound of that. I like the idea of that one. You imagine somebody like a Jedi trying to fight somebody who's got one of those.
Mm.
Pretty cool.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of new and unusual weaponry in The Last Jedi because, as I understand it, Phasma has a staff and the Knights, the Praetorian Guard, all have very different weaponry.
Yeah.
So I think Ryan's going to sort of cover all the bases there. And obviously Katie mentions the First Order Executioner Trooper. So they're given the they're giving the grunts unusual tools to work with. So
yeah,
it's cool stuff. No, awesome stuff. Thank you, Katie. So some sort of whip and Stormtrooper lightsabers.
Yes.
Not bad calls, I would say.
Indeed.
Would you like to take, thank you, Katie, would you like to take the question from James Weibel?
Sure. All right. So James writes, I'm reading Catalyst now, and the delve into the nature of kyber crystals is really interesting. That's what I get for not reading the whole sentence in one go. It makes me think, which also might be answered later, if only living and not synthetic kybers were used in the Death Star, could the crystals themselves have been enslaved? If the crystals are a form of intelligent organism and they were being misused in the Death Star, could they have influenced the Force in some way to help those trying to destroy it? There is something in the book about kinds of kyber, alluding to kyber as a parent of other crystal types. Quartz is a good example. It's a type of crystal which has many other variations like amethyst, onyx, tiger's eye, etc. What if the crystals growing in the fungus under Roshir trees on Kashyyyk are a variation of kyber? What if Starkiller was built on that planet because it was full of a lesser variation of kyber, maybe under those trees? Also in Ahsoka, I think, they mentioned a secret in the heart of Ilum when the Empire was strip mining it. For that matter, could Starkiller have been Ilum? Wow, a lot there.
Right, let me just say, before we get into the breakdown, James is an incredible Star Wars mind. Absolutely incredible.
I can't really argue with that.
James has gone back to the start of our podcast and has been binge listening all the way up. I think he's catching up. He might even be current at this point. And I've been fielding a lot of emails from James. And every now and then there's this amazing email and I'll put it in the show notes. And then something like this comes along and it has to go over the top. So he had this fantastic email about Mace Windu's lightsaber, which we might cover in a coming episode.
Okay.
But this, when I read this, I just thought we have to discuss this because this is fascinating. Trying to get James into the Patreon group, into the VIP group, because I think once we drop him in that Facebook group, the discussion's going to go up a notch. Because this guy is an incredible Star Wars mind.
Yes.
So what do you think? Kyber crystals. Could Starkiller have been Ilum?
I feel like this has been asked somewhere, and I feel like there's a definitive answer to this. Let me go a searching.
I certainly think it's out there.
I think it's been asked of Pablo, you know.
Right. It's definitely something I think that's been tabled previously for discussion, and it really wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, because it would make sense if you were going to target a planet to craft into this sort of weapon. It would make sense. The only thing is, the weapon we're seeing used doesn't really resemble the technology at play in the Death Star, which required the crystals focusing the laser. And what we're getting out of Starkiller seems to be something quite different.
Okay.
But it would certainly make, there's some sense there, there's some logic there, I think. What have you got?
So somebody asked him point blank, can you confirm that Ilum is Starkiller based? And he said no, but his reasoning was because he doesn't want to be used as a citation somewhere.
Right.
So.
Yes. So some fence sitting from Mr. Hidalgo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea. I really love the idea. More from the perspective of the First Order taking something that was central to the Jedi's faith, I guess. Central to their methodology and corrupting it and turning it into this hideous weapon of mass destruction. It's less about there's an analog there for the technology it moves across, you know. Well, it's like the Death Star because it has focused crystals. The technology at play doesn't seem to be the same to me.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of corrupting something that was central to the Jedi faith.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I just say there's no official definition on it in terms of whether or not it's Ilum, which means it's plausible.
Yeah. I like what he says as well about there being various different groups within the family of crystals that drop down under Kyber.
Yeah.
So maybe Kyber crystals are as we're learning in canon, they're somewhat sentient.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's a subsect of Kyber that maybe aren't quite as sentient, but they're still hugely powerful within the Force. And many tiers down until you get to something quite. What did he say? His crystals growing in the fungus.
In the fungus, yeah.
I mean, this is amazing dissection of Star Wars lore, isn't it? Incredible.
Mm.
Yeah, right now I think I will go with I like the idea of Ilum being corrupted purely because I like the idea of the First Order destroying something of value to the Jedi.
Yeah.
Because it makes them seem even more evil. Mm-hmm. Less about there being a display of that technology in use.
Yeah, and it kind of has echoes of the Empire with Jedha.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
What they do in Rogue One and sort of strip the planet bare and then destroy chunks of it.
Yeah, with the stuff they've stolen.
Just to try it out, just to sort of see if it works.
It's gross, isn't it? It is gross.
It's the best kind because it's compelling story. It's it's good storytelling.
Yeah, and if you listen to
sympathy for it builds sympathy for the rebels. It builds sympathy for Jedha.
It frames the antagonist as evil as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great stuff. Thank you, James. Keep them coming. If we don't hear from James in the next week, I'll throw his Mace Windu question into the mix.
All right, cool.
Okay, we've got a question from Mike Messolani again. So this is, hi guys, Gundark 2000 from Charleston, South Carolina here. After listening to one of your recent podcasts where you were talking about they may end the show, as in Star Wars Rebels, something else occurred to me that may wrap things up without killing anybody off. Palpatine supposedly had a multitude of contingencies going on according to Aftermath Empire's End.
Okay.
Had thousands of observatories spread all over the galaxy. Now, with the reintroduction of Thrawn into canon, this opens up a whole new unknown section of galaxy. Yeah. What if the Ghost crew, or at least Kanan and Ezra, find out about this and then head there? That would essentially keep them out of the original trilogy without killing them. Yep. Here's another thought. They could even do the same with Leia. She heads out into unknown regions for some important reason where she's out of the picture, yet they don't have to kill her off and the character lives on.
Yeah.
It may even be possible that this is where Snoke comes from. What do you guys think? Keep up the great show, Mike. So, could Star Wars Rebel deal with the two Jedi by dispatching them to unknown space? And would that also be suitable as a way to leave Leia alive within the narrative, but hide her away in an area of space that we haven't yet seen?
It ties into my my feeling on the kindest way of doing it. So I like it. And in the unknown region and the unknown space is kind of becoming more known because am I right in understanding that's where Arc 2 is based?
Not sure.
Okay.
I am not sure at this point, and I'm not sure we're. I don't know if we're given anything in the story to sort of base that on, are we?
I'm not sure. I think it's on the map, isn't it? At the end of Force Awakens.
Is that unknown space?
I think so. There's I read a really interesting subreddit. There's a Star Wars speculation subreddit, and it's purely, people just kind of, much like Omer's done, starting off with a premise and kind of exploring it and that sort of thing. And let me just spell it again. There we go. Location. Google Maps won't tell me where that is. I don't know why I just did that.
Google Maps.
Yeah, seriously. I meant to click images. That's what went wrong. Let's see. Arc 2. Where is it then? All right, great. It's not helping. Not much help. Oh, here we go. Okay, so it's located in amongst unknown space. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just find.
But is that the same as the unknown regions?
It's the unknown regions. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to paste a picture in the show chat with a picture of it's a comparison, a side by side of sorts, with the galactic map from some sort of reference book and the map from Force Awakens.
Okay.
Now here's what's interesting. The subject of this thread was that if you follow the beginning of the trail on the map in Force Awakens, it starts around a planet called Moraband.
Oh, the Sith.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the theory might be that he's gone to the sort of ultimate source of all evil in order to work backwards.
That is interesting.
Yes. As I say, it's an interesting theory. Would probably need a bit too much exposition to be included in any meaningful way. But nonetheless, quite a cool concept.
Well, if he was exploring the dark side in order to get back to the light.
Mm-hmm. It would also have seen him pass near Yavin 4 as well, where obviously there's an old temple.
Yes, yeah, the old Masasi temple.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some interesting planets on the sort of trajectory approximately. That's interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Yes.
Could this be where Snoke hails from? We have kind of heard
possibly
something along those lines, haven't we?
Yes. I say it's interesting.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Yes, indeed. I think there might be this map is all consuming, so I think I might have to squirrel this away and return to it later. But I like the way Mike's thinking, particularly about that might be where the two Jedi end up in Rebels, so we don't have to dispatch them, bearing in mind it's a children's TV show.
Yeah.
And it might also mean that Luke has gotten some information from those two characters in some way whilst on his pilgrimage. Maybe not in person, but maybe in some sort of documentation, like those books that Luke has in The Last Jedi. It'd be great if Kanan and Ezra went off at the end of the TV show and left information that was then subsequently discovered by Luke. That'd be fantastic. Can't imagine that being the case, but it would be fantastic.
Indeed.
No, it's great stuff. Thank you, Mike. Really, really interesting questions. And Unknown Space sounds like a good place to put Leia, especially if there's some sort of Jedi secrets there to be uncovered. That would definitely work. Yeah, but I would imagine she would then have to come back for us to sort of be able to appreciate that in any sort of narrative way. But
obviously that's not as easily done.
Not really. Not unless JJ gets something out of Kathy. All right, I think it might be a good idea if we go to our break at this point, because we're an hour in. If we have our break, we're going to come back to more listener comms, because it's a listener comm heavy episode and a couple of bits of Star Wars news, for which we will give spoilers before we wade into them.
Okay.
So we will be right back with more listener comms. If you'd like to support what we do here at Talk Star Wars, then head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a patron. Your support will help us as we expand our programming to include further shows, and in return, you'll get access to an exclusive VIP Facebook group, a monthly prize draw, weekly Facebook live sessions, priority release podcasts, an exclusive daily podcast, and a whole lot more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars today and become a TSW patron.
And we're back. So you've just heard about how to become a TSW patron. Are we calling them patrons now? We're still calling them VIPs? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think patrons probably, it makes it clear how they become. I mean, we will always consider them VIPs. The group's the VIP group, But the mechanic that gets them there is the Patreon campaign. So.
Sure. All right. So you can become a TSW patron, which puts you in our VIP program. And as is customary afterwards, we're going to carry on with some listener questions. So the next one comes from Mark S., who writes, I still think the Lego hologram is Palpatine. This hasn't really been officially denied. And as for Palpatine appearing in some form in The Last Jedi, they said he doesn't appear in the current cut. Now, all this said, I think if he did appear in the film, it would be a flashback scene from before Return of the Jedi. I think Snoke was contacted when Palpatine sent agents to investigate wild space. He writes an update. Is this an update from him or an update from you?
No, this is an update from him. He followed it up with a second email.
All right. So a bit of an update. I just checked out the Lego set that Snoke and the hologram come in, and it's a First Order set. So I'd have to say that the hologram isn't Palpatine. But I do believe that Snoke has had contact with Palpatine before his death in Return of the Jedi. So basically, we just got to figure out, is there a way they can make that work?
Yeah. Do you think there was a connection between Snoke and Palpatine that isn't Darth Plagueis? Because obviously that would be the first instinct, or an old instinct at least.
Holocrons are still a thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They are, right? So I think that's a perfectly plausible way of getting through that issue. And obviously a holocron looks a bit like a hologram from a distance.
Yeah.
So I think there's a strong possibility that it might be that.
That would connect Snoke to Palpatine, but not the other way. See, what we're hearing at the moment is that Snoke watched the Empire rise and fall, and he did so from the shadows, right? Which is why a lot of us first jumped to the conclusion, this must be Plagueis, because he's watched his apprentice rise up, and he's waiting until he's been dispatched, and he's come back to reassert his authority.
Okay.
So the Snoke's appreciation for Plagueis is certainly a thing if he's watched the Empire rise and fall, and if he has access to holocrons that contain messages or teachings from Palpatine, that connects Snoke to Palpatine.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily move both ways. So Palpatine doesn't need to have any knowledge of Snoke whatsoever, and doesn't need to have ever contacted Snoke or been in contact with Snoke at any point. The hologram suggests something completely different, doesn't it? That it's two-way, and a two-way appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Well, you can interact with holocrons, can't you? And they contain a kind of an essence rather than it's not like a pre-recorded message.
Yeah, and they're doing something similar in the comic books now in Dr. Aphra, where there's kind of a Jedi essence called Ruh that is has something called technopathy in the book, so it can assume control of a droid, and then it can communicate and things like that. But Aphra, if I remember rightly, creates kind of a copy of it that's like an AI and implants it in something. So it's not entirely clear that it is the actual Ruh identity. So if you expand out on that sort of principle, it could be that whatever is at the heart of these holocrons isn't necessarily the identity of the person, but kind of an echo of them. It's slightly more interactive than a recording. A bit like if you think about Superman and Jor-El, the way he interacts with Kal-El in the Fortress of Solitude, it's not actually Jor-El, but from Kal-El's point of view, it might as well be, because he responds to his questions, but it's kind of an advanced AI, and that's what I think is probably a valid read on a holocron, where it isn't actually an essence of Palpatine in there that can appreciate things as if it's Palpatine. It's more of an approximation of the Palpatine identity, if you take my meaning. Are you muted, Rob?
Sorry, I was, yes. Something did seem off. I'm having to keep muting it to blow my nose because I'm coming down with a cold, I think. But
bless your little cottons.
It happens. I'm quite susceptible to them, unfortunately. I don't know why that is. Probably just not enough patrons. So if people are listening and they want to fix that, and spare me the agonies of the common cold, then that's one way of doing it. Obviously, we'll see how that goes. Worth trying it. What were I talking about?
Patrichlorians you were talking about.
Patrichlorians.
Yeah, we were talking about Palpatine possibly being some sort of advanced AI inside a holocron. So it's not actually.
Oh yeah, okay.
The Palpatine identity that's connected with Snoke. It's almost like an advanced recording.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to keep in mind though is there has been 30 years during which time Snoke could have acquired these things.
Yeah.
Especially if there's, people kind of experts going around like the perfect weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going, like, what's her name? You're better at this stuff than me.
Bazine Natal is the character at the center of that story.
So, but Bazine Natal is going around retrieving objects of significant value.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lightsaber-sized box, but holocrons can be, I imagine, various different shapes and sizes.
Yeah, wow. That's a mind blower. Yeah. It could have been a holocron she collected.
Yeah, for a shadowy figure who doesn't really know much about.
There are also characters called the Acolytes of the Beyond as well, who are now in canon collecting up artifacts from the Sith.
Yes.
So they could also have fallen into the employ of Snoke to provide him with these things and subsequent insights.
Yeah. So there's there's a possibility that they might retcon the perfect weapon to be about that, or to make it clear that the holocron becoming a collectible is kind of a possibility. Now, I was reading a book about this recently. It was a fiction book. It wasn't a Star Wars thing. It was a separate series. But they had in it kind of an object that would exhibit the properties of the personality of the person who imbued it with their spirit. But they would have, they'd be short some information based on what had happened since they'd since they'd kind of imbued their soul upon it.
Mm-hmm.
So there might, they could theoretically go down a similar route with Star Wars, and it could be, a more sentient version of a holocron that Palpatine's figured out a way to imbue his soul in, not his soul, but he's found a way to imbue himself into an object like a holocron, but in a way that gives him a bit more.
I like this
awareness and a bit more personality and a bit more sentience.
Yeah, well, if we're dealing with midichlorians. And so we know that midichlorians are central to a Jedi's ability, or a Force sensitive's ability, to connect with the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And the crystals are almost sentient and they connect to the Force. You can say that perhaps kyber crystals have high midichlorian counts. What's at the heart of a holocron? I don't know. Possibly, maybe it's something along the same lines. Perhaps a holocron could have a high midichlorian count. If we are getting to a point where we're about to learn that Jedi can transfer their essence the way Rey does in the Dr. Aphra book, the way potentially Ahsoka does in Star Wars Rebels. Mm-hmm. She may not be the wolf, but Dave Filoni hasn't said she isn't the owl. Maybe there's a way for Sidious to potentially transfer, if not his entire essence, being into a holocron, at least part of it. And then maybe that could then transfer on, almost like an infection, to Snoke. Maybe Snoke's infected by what remains of Palpatine through the use of a holocron.
Yeah.
That could be quite... And that's an interesting concept. It kind of builds on things we've already speculated about.
Yeah.
And it's one step further on from the psychometry that we see, that we may have seen at play with Kylo using on the Vader helmet that he has in the padded room. So some of that stuff, it's kind of interesting. So this Lego piece might be a representation of Palpatine, but not the hologram we expect it to be. But like you say, the contents of a holocron.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
Indeed.
Pretty deep stuff. And maybe that's its downfall, is that people like Steve and Paul, when they go and see the film, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Because it does require some deeper understanding of Star Wars lore, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, the holocrons they can be explained away fairly easily. And all you need is, the novelization to have a bit more of a depth.
But there is talk of Luke having something in his possession which is almost like a compass. It's been described as being like a steampunk compass.
Right, okay.
That could be a Jedi holocron.
Sure. Yeah, could absolutely be. It does go down I suppose that's the only downside, potentially, is that it goes down the Harry Potter Horcrux route.
It does. I was thinking that actually earlier when we were talking about it, but
it's
not the worst sin.
There's enough to differentiate it, I think.
Yeah.
If you feel so inclined, it's easily done, I think.
Yeah, they've set the rules with the Sith. They've set the rules with the Sith and the Jedi and the Force use. So
yeah, the
framework's already there. It's only a half a step further away from what we already know. So. No, that's great stuff, Mark. Thank you very much for that question. It's very
yes.
Another really it's mind blowing when you start from one place and then a conversation can lead you somewhere else.
Yeah, it gives us the opportunity to kind of
kick these things around, kick the can, as Kyle says, kick the can. All right, let's move on to. Thank you, Mark. Let's move on to Jared McIntyre.
Okay.
He writes, "Dear Paul and the rest. If only he knew when he was writing. If only he knew. I was listening to the end of Tuesday's Kessel Run, and this was last week, because this is one of the questions that rolled over. So the Kessel Run is no more, unfortunately. It will be the TSW Daily, Talk Star Wars Daily. So he says, I was listening to the end of the Kessel Run, Tuesday's Kessel Run episode, and Kessel Run is an engaging daily podcast available to TSW VIPs. Become a VIP today at patreon.com/TalkStarWars. Thank you. Where Mark addresses the impact of how deliberate choices in characters' costumes drive our understanding and perception of the story. A few weeks ago, I stumbled across a video on YouTube where a red blade was superimposed on Luke's green lightsaber for all the scenes in Return of the Jedi. The link is below, so it's in the show notes. Yep. For some reason, I was incredibly moved by the visuals of seeing a red blade in Luke's hand, just like his father. Every scene held a different context, and I especially found the final scene of Luke looking at his own mechanical hand before powering down the red blade and tossing the hilt away incredible. Also, we know a lot more about the kyber crystal manipulation yields red blades, and yet and the emotional turmoil it causes the builder. Don't we know that? And then some. I'd never want to change my beloved Return of the Jedi, but I was compelled by the thought experiment of Luke's wielding a crimson blade due to his dark side dabbling, only to resist those final temptations to kill his papa. Keep up the good work, gents. Jared McIntyre from North Karelia/Carolina, USA.
I'm glad he said Carolina, not Korea. Blimey.
Yeah. Did you?
I mean, not to say, if you're listening in North Korea, I mean, you've obviously got bigger things to worry about, but you're still welcome to us.
Yeah, please let us know that you're listening. It would be really nice if we travel that far. That would be awesome.
Wouldn't it be great?
Wouldn't it?
Joking aside, wouldn't that be amazing?
It would be amazing. We've reached some really unusual places in the world, places I never thought that we would travel, and it was North Korea would be a real ad.
Yeah.
So, did you get a chance to watch this video clip? I did send it out earlier in the week so that people could get a chance to appreciate it. And what did you think? Did you have that reaction to it?
I certainly had the reaction he describes for the fight. You know, the Vader Luke fight. I thought that was brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. It was obviously a little bit tricky to constantly keep track of who was when their blades were clashing and stuff. My brain went a bit doolally. I have the same problem, incidentally, in the first Michael Bay Transformers movie because all the robots are silver.
Yeah.
And then they're just slamming each other into grey buildings. And I'm like, yay. Go on. That one.
Go team. Go team.
Go team, whichever that one was. Yay. So I definitely felt some of the pulls at the heartstrings when that he describes. Not so much during the sail barge bit. I found that one a little less moving.
Yeah, I found it quite startling to see the red blade burst to life.
That was cool, yeah.
Because there is something intrinsic in that now for us as viewers. And to see that sort of happen, I thought, whoa, hang on, that's just is completely off. This reframes that scene entirely.
For sure.
And it did lead to what is the second part of the breakdown. What if he ignites a red lightsaber in The Last Jedi? I mean, red is so present now in the marketing for The Last Jedi. And we're hearing about Luke having a red crystal around his neck on a little wooden sort of necklace.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the green lightsaber. We haven't seen the hilt of the Jedi lightsaber yet in marketing.
Yeah,
they're hiding that lightsaber from us.
Mm-hmm.
So what if when he sparks up the lightsaber, it's red?
Yeah, that would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Because of, I mean, the way Jared sort of kicks this question off is the conversation we'd had previously about how costume is used to communicate a theme and elicit a certain reaction from us.
Mm-hmm.
This is that mechanic to the nth degree. We know what it means when a red lightsaber bursts into life. And if Luke sparks up a red lightsaber instead of the green one in this film, are we all going to immediately lose our minds?
Well, it depends, doesn't it? For instance, he doesn't ignite it in a fight with Kylo. He ignites it on Ahch-To. Rey immediately panics, but he kind of talks her down and explains that it's not that simple, and he's kind of understood. Now he understands the balance, that sort of thing. Or maybe it's something where the crystal's red and it's going back to the normal color over time.
Right, yeah.
Because maybe it's healing, but not at a speed that, would kind of, facilitate an instantaneous switch of status.
Mm-hmm.
But it would kind of over time just gradually kind of shift as Luke regains his faith in goodness.
I really like that. And I think there's a faster way to it. If you just have Luke ignite like a white-bladed lightsaber,
that works.
That's going to inspire a lot of reaction from the audience. And from those of us in the know, for those of us that understand what that means, it's going to have one meaning. For everyone else, it's going to be like a state of confusion.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite of what happens if Luke sparks up a red lightsaber, because that communicates to general audiences, bad guy. But if he sparks up white, to us it says that was once a bled crystal. Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
And to the people that don't understand that, they're just going to think, well, there's something different about his lightsaber. Why is that different? And it does the same job in a way. We're all asking the question, why is that okay? Why is this the case? Yeah. So I'd imagine Luke igniting a white lightsaber would say a lot about what he's been doing in his downtime, or could potentially hint at what he's been doing in his downtime, and could say something about the red crystal he has around his neck, and could even say something about the crystal that Kylo is using.
Yes,
because we speculated previously, haven't we, about how Kylo wants Vader's crystal.
Yep.
How he could have defeated Luke and bled Luke's crystal, and maybe Luke has restored one of those crystals. And with what we've just learned in the Darth Vader comic book run, the crystal Vader had belonged to an exiled Jedi.
Okay.
Who was completing his Barish vow in isolation.
Yep.
His name was Kirik Infalar. He's a powerful Jedi that Vader defeated and then corrupted the crystal and made it into his own red blade.
Right.
Now, if decades later, Luke is a Jedi Master in isolation, perhaps completing the Barish vow, and he has restored Kirik Infalar's crystal from its bled state when it was in his father's possession, and it is now in a clear state, giving Luke a white lightsaber, that will tie together so many wonderful pieces of canon.
Yeah.
It's the first, what we've just learnt about that crystal and how it fought for its own survival in the comic book, trying to convince Anakin to rise up against what was happening to him. This thing showed agency. It showed intellect and will. It tried to fight back, defend itself. If we get Luke to restore that, and that's the blade he ignites. It was once red. Mm-hmm. He had that red thing in his possession, and he restored it. And Luke having Kirak Infalar's blade would just be fantastic. And his father's blade, Darth Vader's blade, the blade that he once fought on the Death Star 2. How can this not be a thing?
True. The only thing I would say I wouldn't agree on in what you just described, I'm on board with most of it. The only thing I wouldn't be so keen on is the idea of the Barish Vow, because I think that why he's there has much more to do with something on Ahch-To that he's looking for rather than self-imposed exile.
Yeah.
And I think I talked about it last week, didn't I? That the idea that he would open a cave or something like that, and it would be the first time he'd seen those books.
Yes. Yeah. We kind of agreed on that being a probability, didn't we?
I believe the word used was genius, which I felt was a little strong at the time, but I've come around to it.
Well, as long as you've accepted it, that's fine. That's all that matters. This is Jared. This is great. I love it when we go down these winding roads and one thing leads us somewhere else.
We've had a whole episode of it.
Yeah, the idea of that red lightsaber in Return of the Jedi was startling and very thought-provoking, and obviously it's led me to this idea that perhaps Luke has in fact had the red blade that was once Jedi Master Kirak Infalar's, corrupted by Vader and restored by Luke. Which would possibly make Luke the cloaked figure at the centre of the story perfect weapon, which would be very interesting if he sent Bazine Natal to get his father's lightsaber so that he could restore it. How wonderful would that be?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if that plays out. I hope there's not too much required reading to have that all make sense on film, but it could just be, Luke's got a white lightsaber, why is it white? And then you learn everything else later on. But kind of cool. Jared, thank you very much for the mileage that we got out of that. Fantastic stuff. I think this is the last piece of listener comms, Rob, from Ian Jolliffe. Would you like to take Ian's question?
Can do. Ian writes, "Hi chaps, naked or otherwise." Well, fully clothed in this case, Ian, but thank you for your concern. A what if question from me. Wonderful. What would have happened in the Star Wars story had Padme lived after giving birth to the twins? Would she have found a way to bring the twins up in secret? As Vader consents Padme, presumably he would have sought her out. Maybe the twins would have still had to go with the Lars and Bail. Oh, sorry, yeah. Again, I just didn't. My brain just couldn't finish the sentence properly. If not, at least Obi-Wan wouldn't have had to hang around in the sand and could have attended to his bucket list: test driving a Porsche, bungee jumping off that waterfall on Naboo, and completing that spreadsheet of all the planets he's visited. I don't think the words spreadsheet and the words bucket list should go anywhere together, personally. But and I love me a good spreadsheet. Don't get me wrong. Great to hear your thoughts. All the best, Ian Jolliffe. So, how would the saga have changed if Padme had survived Episode 3?
Personally, I think Padme would have become a central figure in the rebellion.
Yeah.
And so perhaps the need to disappear those children would not have been a thing. That would not have been a requirement of the story. So yeah, I think she would have raised the children within the rebellion, not necessarily in secret, no more secret than the rebellion had to be.
Yeah.
But I think, she'd have been a central figure to that rebellion and raised the children there.
Mm-hmm. Well, in sort of almost in plain sight.
In plain sight, but the
so
rebellion,
as much as the rebellion is, yeah.
Yeah, I suspect the rebellion are always on the move.
Yes.
Dantooine and Yavin 4 and Crate, as we're about to learn.
We're going to another space school, Luke. Oh, but I just made friends here.
Yeah, with the little Rhodian.
Yeah,
named Wald. That would be my estimation, that Padme would have become a central figure in the rebellion. The kids would have been raised in that structure, but it's in secret in as much as they would have been on the run with the rebellion and not necessarily hiding from Vader, just that they would be on the run with the rebellion.
Yeah. I think, for me, I think you're probably bang on. I think she would have been front and center of the rebellion. Maybe not, let's say, not in the public view, but she would have been front and center. And as a result, the kids would have gone around the galaxy a lot, moving from place to place. So maybe they would have become a bit more independent. Maybe both got involved earlier. I mean, for Leia, it's difficult for her to get involved much earlier, but maybe that's kind of the approach that would have been taken.
Yeah, I don't think Leia's position would have changed all that much, because I can't imagine that Bail would have raised Leia in
that wildly differently.
Yeah, I imagine the way she was brought up would have been the way Padme would have raised her.
Yeah.
It would have been Luke that would have been dramatically different. He would have been raised in an environment that was much more hopeful, even though it's the rebellion and they're on the move constantly. Yeah. I think he would have been raised in an environment where duty and honor and self-sacrifice were a thing, and not just this day-by-day lifestyle that the Lars had, of making the harvest. That was kind of it, wasn't it, for them?
For sure.
So Luke definitely would have, all that stuff that Luke did when we met him, staring off to the horizon, daydreaming, was all about having a larger purpose. I think being raised with Padme within the rebellion, he'd have had all the purpose he could have handled. And we would have seen a young man very, very different to the one we met. Yeah,
indeed. I'd say a bit less whiny, a bit more self-assured.
Yeah.
Just generally.
And I don't know how much of those elements really shaped the guy that went to save Anakin.
Yeah.
And whether somebody that was raised alongside Leia with Padme as a permanent influence, I don't know whether that would have equipped him with the skills he needed to be able to go up against Vader and Sidious on Death Star 2 and get the same results. It may have been that the person Luke became was dependent upon that young man growing up on that farm in isolation the way he did. So that was something. That's an interesting sort of thought experiment to see where that takes you when you start with that young boy on that farm.
Yeah.
And what goes into making him the man he becomes by the time we get to Jedi, which is a relatively small period of time, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing. You'd also, I think, you'd see him a lot less complainy because he'd be less bored. Spend a lot of less time. No, not so much in the way of wanderlust and, looking out over the binary sunset kind of longingly. He wouldn't have that that wouldn't be part of his character because he'd be, traveling around all the time as part of the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether or not he'd remain a tool is, still subjective, but there you go.
And of course you mean tool in the best possible way.
Absolutely. I mean the farming kind. What do you think I meant?
Yeah. Indeed. Oh, that's good. The one thing I would say for certain is I don't think I would qualify Padme as being in hiding. I think Padme would have been on the run with the rebellion.
Yeah.
Because that's more out of necessity than anything else. To try and imagine Padme being in hiding sort of betrays the strength of that character. I don't think she would ever hide from Anakin or Vader.
No, I think
any confrontation.
More it would be she'd sort of strike from the shadows more than hiding.
Yeah, I think that it would be a strategic move to give her and the rebellion an advantage. I don't think she would have gone into hiding in a way that implies cowardice, because that is not the young woman we met in the prequels. So I can't imagine that being a thing. I'm not suggesting that's what Ian's saying, but would she have been in hiding? I don't think she would hide from anything.
No, probably not.
No.
It would be, if she did, it would be a tactical. It would be a tactical reason.
Indeed.
Rather than It wouldn't be out of fear. It would be out of, it's easier for me to do what I'm doing if I'm hiding, if I'm not in plain sight.
Yeah, like Mon Mothma on Yavin. Let's get undercover and like where we can be most effective. Awesome. Oh, great stuff. Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much, Ian. All right, let's move into, we've got a couple of bits of Star Wars news. There's not a great deal this week, but what there is quite interesting. So, spoilers for some things, what are about to be said. We're only going to discuss Last Jedi and Han Solo this evening. So it's a wrap, basically.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Last Jedi's in the can.
It's Steve, because Steve's crap.
Because he's crap. The first sign that this was done was an exchange between a fan and Rian Johnson on Twitter. Okay. When the fan asked Rian if The Last Jedi was done or if there was still VFX and sound to do. And Rian came back with, it's all done. It's all complete.
Oh, nice.
Quite simple. And then followed that up very shortly after with an Instagram post that showed him and the post-production crew for The Last Jedi standing in front of a finish sign.
Yep.
And Rian said, that's a wrap from the hardest working post-production crew in the galaxy. Going to miss sitting in the dark rooms with these goobers. So clearly there's a nice dynamic between this group of people. But that's it. It's done. The film's wrapped. In the can. All the music's mixed. Everything.
Yeah, nice.
So we should, at some point, this should drop in front of a couple of boards, the MPAA and the BBFC. We should get a running time and we'll get a certification. So we'll have a better understanding of what we're in for come December.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's done. Wow. What a journey for Rian Johnson. What smooth production.
Yeah. It's all, it's all coming along.
It's been the best one yet, isn't it? In terms of having trials and tribulations. So off the back of the news that this is wrapped, we also get a hint that the Last Jedi trailer will drop on the 9th of October. This first started with Mark when he responded to a fan's tweet where they were asking when we were going to see a trailer, and he said, watch Monday Night Football on the 9th of October for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Very cheeky.
Yep.
He then walked that back, deleted the tweet, and walked that back. But subsequently, a number of outlets are saying that they've got sources close to Lucasfilm who are saying that, in fact, it is the 9th of October. Mm-hmm. It will, in fact, be halftime on the Monday Night Football, and the running time of the trailer is thought to be 2 minutes, and it's supposedly Luke-centric. So,
yeah.
I'm quite surprised. I mentioned this on the Talk Star Wars Daily podcast today. I'm quite surprised that, or I would be surprised if it was Luke-centric, because I can't imagine Luke having enough screen time to be able to spare 2 minutes and for it to be spoiler-free.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a difficult one, I think. It would be difficult to put any character in a trailer for 2 minutes and not uncover something that should be preserved for the movie. So, 9th of October. If that is the case and it plays half-time or part way through the Monday Night Football, it would put it in the wee hours in the morning for the UK. Sort of like 1 or 2 a.m. So I guess it's going to be one of those things where we're going to miss this one.
Yeah.
We're going to wake up to Twitter feeds full of reactions before we get to see it. So
yeah, 3 I think it would drop. Somebody worked it out that it would be most likely to drop at 9 p.m. Eastern, which would mean it would be about 3 a.m.
Right.
No, 1 a.m. our time.
1 a.m. our time, yeah.
And I'm not, as much as I love Star Wars, homeboy's got to sleep.
Yeah, especially when that's a Monday.
Well, exactly. It's already bad enough it being a Monday.
So
barely tolerable then.
The Tuesday we'll be waking up, trying not to be spoiled, and then watching it, perhaps doing a reaction video, and then for me it would be going straight into the Talk Star Wars Daily podcast to sort of break that down and spend some time talking about it. But I hope it happens.
Yeah,
I can't imagine them leaving it much longer now.
No, it has to be soon, doesn't it? There's only as much as they're being secretive, I can't imagine they're going to make it work that secretively. And I think they can still show us a little more, and still keep the secret generally.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's one thing since April.
Yes,
they're really. This is the way you should market a movie, I think, especially Star Wars. It sells itself. We don't need to convince anybody, but we all just want to see stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because it's the best worst thing that we're getting.
Yeah.
So that's it for Last Jedi news. Really, there's nothing else to talk about this week, and I'm sure there won't be now until that trailer drops. But over on the Han Solo movie, there are a few more things to be discussed. So a couple of images have come out. I've only put one in here, but we will talk about the other one. Ron tweeted this image out last weekend. It's a very stylized photograph from the set of the untitled Han Solo movie. Yes. And it came along with a description that there are dark and desperate times in the galaxy far, far away. And this, it looks like there's sort of some kind of almost like a pod racer engine or something. The whole place is in a dust cloud.
Yeah.
And then you can just see kind of crew in silhouette, really. Thought that this might be Kessel.
Could be. Yeah, that would fit. Malastare.
Yeah, could be Malastare.
But they have pod racing on Malastare.
Yeah, they do.
And dust storm would be one of the reasons it might be very dangerous.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just a thought.
It's a cool image. And looking at it, there's a guy here who's crew, just the guy on the left hand side.
Mm-hmm.
But he looks very much like the silhouette of a Ralph McQuarrie design for one of the original characters. Do you not think, with a low slung belt?
Yeah, it's an interesting, an interesting image, isn't it? Because it, like you say, it does lend itself to that kind of idea, even though it's not, presumably.
No, well, he's wearing Nike trainers, so I think he's almost certainly not one of those characters. But
they look like plastic bags. Are they not plastic bags?
What's that on his feet?
Yeah,
I think that's the Nike swoosh.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong, but it's very interesting, but not as interesting as something that Ron tweeted out just a couple of days ago, which was some glyphs in a relief on a wall.
Oh yeah,
did you see that?
I heard about this. I saw the glyphs. I haven't actually gone ahead and translated them myself.
Yeah, so Ron put them out and said, "Can anyone translate this?" And Paul Bateman, who's always he's very close to Ralph McQuarrie. They were when Ralph was alive. They were friends, and Paul, who is also a concept artist, learnt a lot from Ralph. So there isn't much to know about Ralph McQuarrie that Paul doesn't already fully appreciate. So I'd suggested on the Talk Star Wars Daily that Paul would be the way to go. Get this guy to look at this thing, and he'd crack the code, and he only went and did it. Yeah. And he uncovered, in fact, the concept art from which this relief was taken. Mm. And it was concept art for Yavin 4's Rebel base in the Massassi Temple.
Okay.
Now, I speculated today that I felt it was more likely to be that these glyphs were common to, they do translate, but just into, they don't really have any meaning. They're just, I think it's YZ, A, and G or something. There's nothing to be taken from those directly, but the glyphs are present in temples, and somebody suggested on another outlet that they might have been present in an episode of Rebels when Ezra and Kanan were in a temple. So these things might be common to temples.
Yeah.
And therefore we can deduce that Han and co end up in a temple for whatever shenanigans they're up to. If they're trying to steal something or acquire something, it might actually be in a temple somewhere, not necessarily Yavin.
Yeah.
But just that this glyph is common to a temple. And that would make Han very much like Indiana Jones if they're raiding temples in this movie, and I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, indeed.
Good work on Paul Bateman's part, though, to dig out that original piece of art. Shows what kind of knowledge that guy has.
Indeed.
Okay, right. So, Warwick Davis. This could be considered quite spoilery for the Han Solo film, I think. MSW ran a piece at the weekend where they were suggesting that Warwick might be playing a almost like a gonk droid called Fight Droid 2 in the Han Solo movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like one of those big boxy power droids, but outfitted with all sorts of heavy artillery, chainsaw arms and circular saw arms and stuff like that. And the idea being that there's a chance in the Han Solo movie that there might be some sort of underground fight club that pits people against droids on droids maybe. But I kind of got to thinking about it, and I got one of two scenarios in mind, Rob, for this.
Right.
That'll either be Chewie going up against this Fight Droid 2 and pulling the arms off, which will kind of give us a way to appreciate what Chewbacca is capable of without sort of it getting too messy. But I also really like the idea that Han will end up going up against the Fight Droid, pull the DL-44 and shoot the thing before it gets a chance to do him any harm, which itself would be a callback to Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark when he goes up against a swordsman in the marketplace. And he pulls the gun rather than risk wasting any time with him and his sword play. So I kind of like either of those scenarios. We've seen some bits and pieces, some shots from the set that seem to indicate that maybe there's something going on in like a basement of a club or something, or a bar, cantina. And Chewie certainly seems to be central to one of those images. So I'm wondering if the first option might be the one that they go with and have Chewie pull this thing apart. And get the better of him. Because Wookiees don't like to lose, do they?
No, indeed. And so, maybe he comes off worse in the initial exchange, and then in the in aftermath, he,
lets himself off the chain. Could be pretty cool. I like that though. But I'll put a link in the show notes, which will take you out to MSW, so you can look at their article. And there's a photograph of a droid in there as well. It's not the actual thing. It's not Fight Droid 2. It's an approximation. Another power droid from another movie. So it's worth looking at, though. It's well worth looking at. All right, last piece of news for the evening then. And then, isn't it weird? How much talking do we do when there's just two of us? God, my little voice is already starting to wear out. Last piece of news for the week, and indeed from the Han Solo movie, and that's Emilia Clarke has wrapped. Principal photography is wrapped on Han Solo, and she's the third principal to do so after Don Glover and Paul Bettany. So she's done. The news came out in a tweet from Ron where he said that she'd brought to life an exciting character and also that she's great fun to work with. And
I'm sure she is. She seems delightful.
Yeah, they did look very, very close in that in the photograph. They looked very pleased to work together. So
I wonder if the wrapping coincides with her, because she put up on Instagram last week that she dyed her hair to the same kind of bleach blonde as Daenerys, so like that sort of very, very pale blonde, almost white.
Okay.
To kind of go towards the wig that she wears for Game of Thrones. So I wonder if that coincided with, that's when she decided to do it, was because she'd already...
That's an interesting message that's been sent, because if she must be absolutely wrapped then, if she's being allowed to dye her hair for another project.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think it's for a project. I think she just fancied doing it.
Oh, well, there you go. Then her commitments are done. She's not required for pickups.
No, maybe not.
So maybe Ron's mixing the pickups and what remains of principal photography into one schedule.
Possibly.
They'll move straight into the edit suite after this.
Yeah.
For the rapid descent to May.
Fair enough. Yeah, entirely possible.
Wow. Yeah, but that's a signal being sent there from her with the dyeing of the hair. She's clearly free.
Yeah.
To move there. That's interesting. Yeah, that's good stuff. Very interesting stuff. Well, that's it then. That one piece of Han Solo news has wrapped up this listener comments heavy episode of the podcast. I'm glad we did that though. There was a lot of emails and what have you to sort of get through, because I don't want to leave anything unaddressed on the show. People take the time to write to us. They should have their questions addressed. So, all right, you ready to wrap this up, or is there anything you want to add before we move on?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to Talk Star Wars again this week then. We apologise for the lack of Paul and the lack of Steve, but I think you'll agree it's better without them.
Although I hear that in the pre-show Facebook Live you were throwing me some shade.
No, that's not even true.
Oh, it's not. No,
okay. That's not even.
I'll have to. I guess history will tell the true story.
Back to the tape. Once I've had a chance to edit that video.
Fake news.
Fake news. Bigly.
Fake news. Yeah. Just as a word of advice, if you're going to have a pop at one of the crew, maybe don't do the useful one.
Yeah, no, that's the reliable one. Yeah,
just a thought. I mean, I'm not telling you how to do it or anything. Just a thought.
It just seems sensible. All right. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes and take advantage of that Ron Burgundy guarantee. So whatever you write in there, we'll read as long as it's clean. So if you've got something that you need to promote, like a blog or a podcast, that could be the place to do it. Yeah. You can also email your questions to us at talkstarsinfo@gmail.com. If you attach an MP3 like Ads did, we will use it as a voicemail in the show. Or you can send that to us in text message form, iMessage to the same address, or Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Any way you want to get in touch with us, you can. With that said, Rob, where can people find you between shows?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RobWadeVision, and I can also be found on emotionally14.com, which is where you can find anything I do that's non-talk Star Wars.
Excellent stuff. You'll find Stephen at Wild About Nature on YouTube, and if you search Wild About Nature on Twitter, you'll find him, but he's at Stephen_Ware on that platform. Paul, you'll find at moviescorenews.com, and he's Moviescore News on Twitter. And you can find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk and on Twitter as at TalkStarWars. You can find all of our partner shows on the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network at StarWarsCommonwealth.com, and they are Tumbling Saber, Generation X-Wing, the Rogue Squadron podcast, who are riding quite high in iTunes, I noticed today, doing very well. The Skyhoppers podcast, the Nerd Room, and San Diego Sabres. And consider becoming a patron and go to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars. You'll unlock the full Talk Star Wars experience there with a daily podcast, priority release shows. You'll get a newsletter, you'll get fun downloadables, but the most important part is you'll get to become a part of a VIP community in a closed Facebook group. There's Facebook Lives every week. There's prize draws every month. But the community aspect of this thing is absolutely fantastic. We're also building towards a couple of goals, which include live call-in shows every 200 patrons we add. And ultimately, when we reach our major goals, we're going to unlock regular shows for Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Clone Wars. Kind of a watch-along, so you can join us from episode 1, and we'll do the whole thing together. It's a lot of fun. I've found this week to be a lot of hard work, but very, very rewarding. Getting us all into Patreon has been fantastic, a really good move. So that's patreon.com/Talk Star Wars. Head over there, have a little look around, see if there's anything you like. Just a couple of dollars every month, and you can become part of something that's becoming quite special indeed. All right, Rob, should we get out of here?
Let's do that.
Nice one. Thanks very much, everybody. We will speak to you next week.
Bye-bye there.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
the Tumbling Saber Podcast. The Generation X-Wing Podcast.
The TSW Roundtable.
The Skyhoppers Podcast.
And the Nerd Room Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com. Take your first steps to a larger world.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.